Have you noticed that the most beautiful people get more likes than the smartest ones? That a perfect body is worth more than a brilliant idea? We're living in a strange time where appearance has become currency and deep thinking seems to have no value anymore. On social media, someone who posts a well-produced photo gets millions of likes, while a scientist who discovered something important can barely get any attention. How did we get to this point? Schopenhauer, a German philosopher who lived 200 years ago, already warned us about this. He saw something that has now become our reality. Humanity prefers to live on the surface of things, prefers fake shine over real gold. And the worst part is that this choice is costing us dearly. In this video, we're going to understand why intelligence is being replaced by appearance and what we can do to not fall into this trap. Get ready, because what you're about to discover might completely change your view of the world we live in. Schopenhauer had a central idea in his philosophy that he called the will. For him, there's a blind force that moves all things in the universe, a purposeless energy that constantly pushes us forward. We, human beings, are dominated by this force. We want, we desire, we search without stopping. And we're never satisfied. When we get something, we soon want something else. It's an endless cycle. Today, this will manifests itself in a very specific way, in the desperate search for external validation. We need others to see how beautiful, successful, and happy we are. We post photos, videos, share every moment of our lives hoping someone will validate us with a like, a comment, a share. We've become slaves to other people's opinions. Our self-esteem no longer comes from within, it comes from outside. Schopenhauer would say this is just another form of suffering. We're trying to fill a void that can never be filled. Because no matter how many likes you get today, tomorrow you'll need more. No matter how many compliments your photo gets, next week you'll have to post a better one. It's a race with no finish line. And while we chase this superficial validation, we leave aside what really matters, developing who we are on the inside. The thing is, this need for constant approval turns us into actors on an endless stage. We wake up thinking about what we're going to post. We choose clothes not because we like them, but because they look good in photos. We visit places not for the experience, but for the potential to generate content. Our life stops being lived and starts being staged. And in this staging, we lose contact with our true essence. The philosopher also talked about the veil of Maya, a concept he borrowed from Eastern philosophy. Maya is the goddess of illusion. The veil of Maya is what covers true reality and makes us see only appearances. We live deceived, looking at shadows and thinking they're real things. It's like being in a theater, watching a play, and forgetting that it's just a performance. Social media is the perfect veil of Maya. There, everyone creates an edited version of themselves. Filters hide imperfections. Photos are taken dozens of times until the perfect one comes out. Captions are carefully written to convey a specific message. Nobody shows the bad moments, the insecurities, the failures. What we see is a collective illusion where everyone seems happy, beautiful, and fulfilled all the time. And the worst part is that we start to believe in this illusion. We compare our real life with the edited lives of others and feel inadequate. We think we're failing because our reality doesn't look like the show we see on our screens. Schopenhauer would say we're trapped in the world of representation, unable to see the essence of things. We exchange truth for fantasy and pay the price with our mental health. What's interesting is that this illusion is collective and everyone participates in it consciously. We know that friend's perfect photo took 2 hours to get ready. We know that happy moment frozen on Instagram doesn't represent her entire day. But even so, we keep playing this game of pretending everything is perfect. It's as if we've made a silent agreement to lie to each other and to ourselves. In the old days, people valued knowledge. A wise man was respected. Someone who spent years studying, reading, reflecting on life had a special place in society. Philosophers, scientists, writers were admired not for their appearance, but for what they had to offer intellectually. the content of character was worth more than the shape of the body. Today, this has been turned upside down. We spend hours on social media consuming empty content. 15-second videos with little dances, photos of people in studied poses, shallow motivational phrases repeated 1,000 times. Where's the space for deep thought? Where's the time to read a difficult book, reflect on a complex idea, question our own beliefs? This space doesn't exist anymore because the culture of appearance demands speed. Everything has to be fast, easy, beautiful. If an idea takes more than a minute to explain, people lose interest. If a text has more than 3 paragraphs, nobody reads it. Schopenhauer spent hours alone in his office, immersed in deep reflections. He knew that wisdom doesn't come from quick information, but from slow contemplation. But who has patience for that nowadays? Our attention span is being systematically destroyed. Studies show we can concentrate on something for less time than a goldfish. We jump from one stimulus to another without ever really processing anything. We read headlines, but not complete articles. We watch summaries, but not entire movies. We listen to song clips, but not complete albums. This constant fragmentation of attention makes us incapable of dealing with anything that requires prolonged focus. The German philosopher made an important distinction between the world as representation and the world as will. The world as representation is what we see on the surface. It's the forms, the colors, the appearances. It's reality as it presents itself to our senses. The world as will is the hidden force behind everything, the essence that moves things, the deep reality that we can't see directly. Our society lives only in the world of representation. We only care about what's on the surface. A person is judged by their clothes, their car, their house, their body. Nobody asks what their values are, what they think, how they treat others when nobody's looking. The packaging has become more important than the content. It's like judging a book only by its cover without ever opening it to read. This inversion has serious consequences. Empty people on the inside gain prominence because they know how to present themselves well. Individuals with questionable character become influential because they have good looks. Meanwhile, serious thinkers, dedicated scientists, true artists, stay in the shadows. They might have something valuable to offer, but they don't know how to play the game of appearances. And in a world where only the surface matters, whoever doesn't shine on the outside simply doesn't exist. Schopenhauer argued that this obsession with the surface prevents us from achieving any real understanding about life. We remain trapped in judgments based on temporary and irrelevant characteristics. Physical beauty disappears with time. Social status can evaporate overnight. Material possessions are lost or become obsolete. But we build our entire identity and value system on top of these ephemeral things. Constant exposure to the edited lives of others is making us sick. Studies show that the more time we spend on social media, the more anxious and depressed we become. Why? Because we live in a state of permanent comparison. We look at a friend's photo in Paris and feel small because we haven't traveled. We see an influencer's perfect body and hate our own body. We observe the apparent success of others and feel like failures. Schopenhauer had a pessimistic view of human life. For him, to exist is to suffer. The will pushes us to desire things we don't have, and when we get them, we soon get bored and want more. It's a cycle of perpetual dissatisfaction. The only thing that changes is the objects of our desire. Before we wanted food and shelter. Today we want likes and followers. But the mechanism of suffering is the same. The difference is that now this suffering is amplified by social media. It's no longer enough to compare ourselves with our neighbors. Now we compare ourselves with the whole world, with celebrities, millionaires, professional models. It's an impossible competition to win. And the more we try to reach these unreal standards, the further we get from who we really are. We lose our authenticity trying to fit into an image we can never be. The worst part is that this constant comparison creates a sense of artificial urgency. We see someone our age achieving something and we panic. We think we're behind in life, that we should be more advanced, that something's wrong with us. But we're comparing our real journey, full of obstacles, with the edited and carefully selected achievements that others choose to show. It's a fundamentally unfair comparison that can only make us feel bad. There's something curious happening in our society. People with no intellectual training, no specialized knowledge, no real contribution to the world gain millions of followers. Why? Because they're beautiful, because they know how to pose, because they master the art of superficial self-promotion. Meanwhile, university professors, researchers, serious writers can barely pay their bills. Schopenhauer harshly criticized what he called the taste of the masses. For him, most people don't have the ability to appreciate truly good things. They prefer the obvious, the easy, the superficial. A pretty painting sells more than a deep one. A catchy song plays more than a complex composition. People don't want to think. They want to be entertained simply and quickly. This preference for mediocrity has always existed, but today it's institutionalized. Digital platforms reward superficial content because it generates more engagement. A dance video goes viral faster than a philosophy lesson. A bikini photo has more reach than a scientific article. The system was designed to promote appearance and bury substance. And we, as consumers, feed this system every time we choose empty entertainment over deep content. But here's an important reflection. Social media isn't the enemy of knowledge by nature. There are excellent educational channels, serious science communicators, teachers who can explain difficult concepts in accessible ways. The problem isn't in the tool itself, but in the use we make of it. When we consistently prioritize the superficial over the deep, when we reward appearance more than substance, we're choosing the type of content we want to see thrive. The thing is, this kind of conscious choice requires effort. It's easier to watch a funny video than to think about a complex topic. It's more comfortable to look at pretty pictures than to read dense texts. Our mind naturally seeks the path of least resistance, and platforms know this. That's why their algorithms push us toward content that demands less from us, that keeps us scrolling non-stop, that addicts instead of educates. Schopenhauer was known for being a loner. He didn't have many friends and spent most of his time alone. But this wasn't weakness. It was choice. He believed that solitude is necessary for intellectual development. When we're alone, we can think without distractions. We can dive into complex ideas. We can truly know ourselves. Today, solitude has become something scary. People can't stay 5 minutes alone without grabbing their phones. We need to be constantly connected, seeing what others are doing, posting about our own lives. Silence bothers us. Emptiness terrifies us. So we fill every second with external stimuli, with noise, with distraction. But it's precisely in this silence that great ideas are born. It's in solitude that we can process our experiences, reflect on our values, develop our own worldview. Schopenhauer would say that people run from solitude because they're afraid of finding the emptiness inside themselves. They've built an identity based entirely on external validation and don't know who they are when nobody's looking. That's why they need to always be visible, always connected, always performing for an invisible audience. Think about the last time you were really alone with your thoughts. No phone, no music, no television, nothing. Just you and your mind. How long did it last? Probably less than you'd like to admit. Because being alone with our thoughts can be uncomfortable. We start thinking about our choices, our fears, our insecurities, and it's much easier to escape these reflections through constant distraction. But this escape has a price. We never develop a rich inner life. We never learn to be enough for ourselves. We become dependent on external stimuli to feel alive. And ironically, the more we flee from solitude, the lonelier we truly feel. Because being surrounded by superficial online connections is a much deeper form of loneliness than being physically alone, but at peace with yourself. Art has always been, for Schopenhauer, a form of temporary escape from suffering. When we contemplate a true work of art, we can free ourselves for a few moments from the will that dominates us. We stop desiring, wanting, struggling. We simply exist in that pure aesthetic experience. Art elevates us above our miserable condition and gives us a taste of peace. But what have we done with art today? We've turned museums into backgrounds for Instagram photos. People go to exhibitions not to contemplate the works, but to be seen contemplating the works. They take a quick selfie in front of a famous painting and leave without really looking at it. The aesthetic experience has been replaced by the recording of the aesthetic experience. This goes for everything. We travel to beautiful places not to experience the beauty, but to prove on social media that we were there. We go to expensive restaurants not to savor the food, but to photograph the dish. We watch the sunset through our phone screen while recording a video, instead of simply looking at the sky. We've lost the ability to be fully present because we're always worried about documenting and sharing. Life has become a constant performance for an online audience. Schopenhauer argued that true art requires disinterested contemplation. This means looking at something without wanting to possess it, without thinking about how it benefits us, without calculating its value. Just appreciating the thing in itself. But how can we do this when our first impulse upon seeing something beautiful is to grab our phone and photograph it? When our relationship with beauty is always mediated by the need to capture and share it? This inability to simply be present and contemplate things robs us of one of the few genuine sources of happiness we have. The pure aesthetic experience that Schopenhauer described is a rare moment of peace in a world full of anxiety. But we trade this peace for a few temporary likes. It's a terrible bargain. We buy things we don't need with money. We don't have to impress people we don't know. This phrase sums up well the madness of modern consumerism. Schopenhauer saw material attachment as a source of suffering. The more we possess, the more we have to lose. The more we desire to have, the more unhappy we become, because there will always be something we don't have. Today, consumption isn't just about satisfying needs. It's about building an image. We buy certain clothing brands to communicate status. We drive certain cars to show success. We use specific products to associate ourselves with a lifestyle. Our consumer choices have become statements about who we are, or rather, about who we want to appear to be. Social media has intensified this. Now, it's not enough to have beautiful things. We need to show that we have these things. The value of a purchase isn't just in the object itself, but in the likes that the photo of it will generate. We buy experiences thinking about how they'll look on our profile. Every consumer decision is calculated based on its potential to make us seem interesting, successful, enviable. Schopenhauer would say, we're selling our soul for a few crumbs of social approval. The saddest part is that this search for status through consumption never ends. There's always a better, more expensive, more exclusive version of anything. You buy expensive sneakers, and they soon launch a new model. You acquire a latest generation phone, and in 6 months, it's already obsolete. You travel to an exotic place and discover everyone's already been there too. It's an endless race where the finish line moves away every time you approach it. And while we run on this infinite treadmill, we don't realize we're spending our entire life. We work at jobs, we hate to buy things we don't need to impress people we barely know. We sacrifice our time, our health, our real relationships in the name of this illusion of status. And in the end, when we look back, what's left? Nothing substantial. Just a bunch of empty objects and photos on social media that nobody looks at anymore. The educational system should be the place where we cultivate genuine intelligence, where we learn to think, question, analyze. But what has it become? A diploma factory. Students don't want knowledge, they want certificates. They're not interested in truly learning, they just want to pass tests. The diploma has become more important than education itself. Schopenhauer criticized the education of his time for being superficial and aimed only at preparing people for jobs. He thought true education should free the mind, not just train workers. It should teach independent thinking, not just repeat what others have said. But the system prefers to produce obedient people who memorize information instead of critical individuals who question everything. Today, we have the culture of quick courses. Learn English in 3 months. Become a digital marketing expert in 2 weeks. Master any skill by watching in 7 days. Everything is superficial, fast, easy. Nobody wants to spend years deeply studying a subject. They want shortcuts, magic formulas, immediate results. And so we produce an entire generation of people with shallow knowledge about everything and depth about nothing. This educational superficiality has serious consequences. People who haven't developed critical thinking are easily manipulated. Individuals without deep knowledge of anything can't distinguish quality information from nonsense. A population educated only on the surface is vulnerable to absurd theories, simplistic solutions to complex problems, charismatic but incompetent leaders. Besides, we lose the pleasure of true learning. Studying something deeply, mastering a complex subject, making connections between different areas of knowledge brings a satisfaction that no quick course can offer. But this satisfaction requires patience and sustained effort. It requires accepting that we won't understand everything immediately. It requires humility to recognize our ignorance. And these are increasingly rare qualities in a culture that promises instant results without real effort. The way we communicate has drastically impoverished. We reduce complex thoughts to hashtags. We express deep emotions with emojis. Meaningful conversations have been replaced by exchanging memes. Language, which should be a tool to express sophisticated ideas, has become just a means to generate quick engagement. Schopenhauer was obsessed with clarity in writing. He believed that confused thoughts produce confused texts. If someone can't explain an idea clearly, they probably didn't understand that idea properly. He despised authors who used fancy language to hide lack of content. For him, simplicity wasn't stupidity. It was the result of deep understanding. But today we have another problem. We don't use overly complex language. We use overly simple language. We reduce everything to slogans, catchphrases, motivational cliches. Be yourself. Believe in your dreams. Positive thinking. These phrases don't mean anything. They're empty shells repeated infinitely until they lose any meaning. We've stopped having real conversations where we explore ideas with depth. We've traded them for superficial comments that fit in a text box. The loss of the ability to express ourselves with nuance and complexity impoverishes us intellectually. When we can only think in short and simple sentences, our own thoughts become short and simple. Language doesn't just express thought, it shapes it. If our vocabulary is limited, our ability to understand the world is too. If we can only communicate basic ideas, we can only have basic ideas. Moreover, this excessive simplification of language eliminates the possibility of expressing ambiguity, contradiction, uncertainty. Real life is full of these things. Situations where there's no right or wrong answer. Contradictory feelings that exist at the same time. Complex questions with no simple solution. But our way of communicating has no space for this. Everything has to be definitive, clear, direct. And so we lose the ability to deal with the complexity inherent in human existence. So what do we do in the face of this scenario? Schopenhauer had a radical answer: deny the will. For him, the path to ending suffering was to stop desiring, not in the sense of repressing desires, but of transcending them, through aesthetic contemplation, compassion for others, and ultimately, an ascetic life where we abandon worldly pleasures. Applying this today doesn't mean becoming a monk and going to the Himalayas. It means making conscious choices about where we put our attention. It means resisting the constant pressure to always be visible, always productive, always perfect. It means cultivating a rich inner life even if nobody knows it exists. It means valuing more who we are than how we appear. In practice, this could be turning off social media for a few hours and simply thinking. It could be reading a difficult book that will challenge your way of seeing the world. It could be having deep conversations with few people instead of shallow interactions with many. It could be developing skills and knowledge for the pleasure of learning, not to show off. Each small choice to prioritize substance over appearance is an act of resistance against this superficial culture that consumes us. But this path isn't easy. You're going to feel like you're missing something. When everyone around you is posting their perfect lives and you choose not to do that, you'll feel invisible. When your friends are buying expensive things to impress and you choose to live more simply, it'll seem like you've fallen behind. When the whole world values appearances and you choose to develop substance, you'll feel out of place. This feeling of being out of sync with everyone is uncomfortable. But Schopenhauer would say this discomfort is a sign you're on the right path, because the path of the majority is the path of suffering disguised as happiness. It's the infinite treadmill of desires that are never satisfied. It's the search for validation that never comes. Choosing another path requires courage. It requires being willing to be different. It requires accepting that you might not be understood by the people around you. Philosophy has never been more necessary than now. We live in a time of abundant information but scarce wisdom. We have access to all human knowledge in the palm of our hands, but we spend our time looking at photos of people we don't know. Philosophy offers us tools to think critically about this, to question the obvious, to see beyond appearances. Schopenhauer teaches us to look at the essence of things, not to let ourselves be fooled by superficial shine, to understand that the search for external validation is an endless path to suffering. He shows us there's another way to live, based on internal development instead of external performance. A life perhaps less glamorous, but infinitely more authentic. Studying philosophy isn't just knowing what dead thinkers said. It's developing our own capacity to think. It's learning to ask the right questions. It's gaining vocabulary to understand our own experience. It's realizing we're not alone in these anxieties, that others have gone through this before us. And above all, it's giving us the possibility to consciously choose what kind of life we want to live, instead of just following the flow of what everyone else is doing. Philosophy gives us critical distance. When we're immersed in a culture, it's hard to see its problems. It's like trying to see the water when you're inside it. But studying how other thinkers analyze their own societies gives us tools to analyze ours. Schopenhauer looked at the 19th century and saw obsession with status and appearance. We look at the 21st century and see the same thing amplified by technology. But seeing the problem is the first step to changing it. And here, it's worth recognizing something important. The digital tools we criticize so much aren't enemies in themselves. They can be used to spread true knowledge, connect people in meaningful conversations, democratize access to education. There are teachers using social media to teach physics, philosophers sharing complex ideas in accessible ways, scientists disseminating important discoveries. The problem isn't in the tool, it's in the predominant use we make of it. When we consciously choose to follow content that challenges us intellectually instead of just entertains us, when we seek depth instead of superficiality, when we use these platforms to learn instead of just showing off, we're making technology work in our favor. But this requires discipline and intention. It requires fighting against algorithms that want to keep us trapped in the superficial. It requires actively choosing the difficult over the easy, the substantial over the empty. History is full of brilliant thinkers who were ignored in life. Van Gogh sold only one painting while alive. Today, his works are worth millions. Schopenhauer himself only gained recognition at the end of his life, after decades writing for a tiny audience. Many of humanity's greatest geniuses died poor, forgotten, ridiculed. Why does this happen? Because truly original people are ahead of their time. Their ideas are too complex for popular taste. They're art challenges instead of comforts. They don't fit the aesthetic standards of the moment. So they're ignored, ridiculed, or simply invisible to their contemporaries. Only decades or centuries later does the world finally catch up with them and recognize their value. Meanwhile, empty celebrities dominate public attention. People famous for being famous. Influencers who don't influence anyone to do anything really important. Personalities whose only contribution to the world is their appearance or ability to generate controversy. They shine intensely for a few years and then are completely forgotten. They leave no legacy, change nothing, add nothing of value. They're fireworks that explode beautifully, but disappear the next instant. This leads us to an uncomfortable question. What do we want to leave in the world? Do we want to be remembered for our appearance that will inevitably disappear, or for ideas and contributions that can endure? Do we want to accumulate likes that will be forgotten tomorrow, or build something of lasting value? The answer should be obvious, but our culture constantly pushes us in the wrong direction. Schopenhauer believed that the only real form of immortality lies in the works we leave behind. Not in fame, not in immediate recognition, but in the genuine contribution we make. He himself didn't care whether people of his time read him or not. He wrote for posterity, confident that his ideas were good enough to survive. And he was right. 200 years later, we're still here talking about him. Compare this with how many famous influencers from 5 years ago you still remember. How many instant social media celebrities who shined brightly but disappeared without a trace. They had millions of followers, made a lot of money, were recognized on the street. But when the appearance lost its shine or the public got tired, nothing was left. Because there was no substance behind the facade. There's also a deep psychological aspect to this obsession with appearance. When we build our entire identity on top of how others see us, we're placing our sense of self in the hands of people who don't really know us. Every criticism becomes an existential threat. Every loss of a follower feels like a piece of us disappearing. We live in a state of constant anxiety because our own identity is constantly being judged and evaluated. Schopenhauer would say, this is living as a slave. When your worth depends on others' opinions, you're not free. You become hostage to external expectations, always molding your behavior to please, always worried about what they'll think. You lose the ability to act according to your own values and convictions. Your life stops being yours to become a performance for an audience that's never completely satisfied. True freedom, for the philosopher, comes from within. It comes from building a sense of identity based on who you really are, not on how others perceive you. It comes from developing your own values and living according to them, even when nobody's applauding. It comes from finding satisfaction in the process of becoming a better person, not in the praise this may or may not generate. This doesn't mean becoming insensitive to others' opinions. It just means not making it the center of your existence. It means listening to constructive criticism without letting destructive criticism destroy you. It means valuing genuine recognition without depending on it to know your own worth. It's a difficult balance, but necessary for a mentally healthy life. Another aspect that Schopenhauer explored was the nature of boredom and how we escape from it. For him, humans oscillate between two states: suffering when we desire something we don't have, and boredom when we get what we wanted. We rarely experience lasting satisfaction. And when boredom arrives, we do everything to escape it. Social media is the perfect tool for escaping boredom. The moment we feel bored, we grab our phone and dive into an infinite stream of content. We never need to really feel the boredom, process it, or learn something from it. There's always a distraction one touch away. And this might seem positive at first glance, but it's actually robbing us of something important. Boredom, according to Schopenhauer, is necessary. It's in boredom that deep questions about life arise. It's when we have nothing to do that we start thinking about the meaning of things, about our goals, about who we are. Boredom forces us to confront ourselves. And yes, this is uncomfortable, but it's from this discomfort that real growth is born. When we completely eliminate boredom from our lives through constant distraction, we also eliminate the opportunity for self-knowledge. We never stop to think because there's never a moment of silence. We live in autopilot mode, reacting to external stimuli without ever really consciously choosing how we want to live. And then, one day, we wake up and realize that years have passed without us really living. We just existed, consumed, reacted. Compassion was another central theme for Schopenhauer. He believed that genuine compassion for others was one of the few things that could temporarily free us from the selfishness inherent in the will. When we truly feel another person's pain as if it were our own, we momentarily transcend our own individuality and experience a form of deep connection. But the culture of appearance kills genuine compassion. When we look at people and see only their carefully constructed surfaces, we can't feel real empathy. When everyone seems perfect and happy on social media, we don't notice the real suffering that exists behind the masks. When we judge people only by appearance, we dehumanize them. They become objects to be evaluated, not complex human beings with their own struggles and pains. Moreover, constant exposure to the superficial suffering of celebrities desensitizes us to real suffering. We see a famous actress complaining about something trivial, and it gets more attention than millions of people living in real misery. We get used to treating suffering as entertainment. We comment on other people's problems as if they were reality show episodes. We lose the ability to truly feel with the other. Schopenhauer would say this lack of genuine compassion is a symptom of a sick society. When we can't see the shared humanity that exists in all of us, when we treat people as objects for our entertainment or comparison, we lose what's most fundamental in human beings. And this not only harms others, but harms us too. Because in compassion, we find meaning. In genuine connection with other human beings, we find an antidote to existential emptiness. There's also the question of time. Schopenhauer immensely valued time as the most precious resource we have. Each moment that passes never comes back. Each wasted hour is an hour of life that's gone forever. And he argued we should be extremely careful about how we spend this limited resource. But what do? We spend hours scrolling through social media feeds without absorbing anything of value. We consume hundreds of short videos that go in one ear and out the other. We spend our time, our most precious asset, on content designed to addict us, but not to enrich us. And at the end of the day, when we realize hours have passed and we've done nothing significant, we feel empty. Because deep down, we know we've wasted something we can never get back. The time we spend building and maintaining our online image is time we don't spend really living. It's time we don't use to develop real skills, build deep relationships, create something of value, learn something new. We exchange real experiences for representations of these experiences. We exchange life for performance of life. Schopenhauer would say that when we reach the end of life and look back, we won't remember how many likes we got. We won't care about how many followers we had. We'll remember the genuine experiences, the real connections, the knowledge we acquired, the contributions we made. We'll wish we had spent more time doing things that truly mattered and less time worried about appearances. The problem is that this perception usually comes too late. Only when we get old and look back do we see clearly how much time we wasted on things without importance. But then there's no way to go back. That's why the philosopher insisted we should think about these questions while we still have time to change our course. We should question now whether the life we're living is the life we want to have lived when we reach the end. There's a deep irony in all this. We seek appearance and external validation because we want to feel special, unique, important. But in doing this, we become the same as everyone else who's doing exactly the same thing. Everyone posting similar photos, using similar filters, following the same trends, repeating the same phrases. In trying to stand out, we become part of a uniform and indistinguishable mass. Schopenhauer observed that true individuality comes from within. It comes from developing your own way of thinking, your own values, your own worldview. It comes from having the courage to be different, even when it means not being popular. The truly unique people in history didn't try to fit in. They didn't follow trends. They created their own. But creating your own path is scary. It's more comfortable to follow what everyone else is doing. If everyone's obsessed with appearance, at least we're not alone in this obsession. If everyone's living superficially, we don't need to confront the frightening depth of existence. There's safety in being part of the herd, even when the herd is marching toward a cliff. The question is, do you want to be just another one in the crowd, or do you want to be genuinely yourself? Do you want to live the life society expects of you, or the life that really has meaning for you? These are difficult questions, and answering them honestly may require drastic changes in how you live. But Schopenhauer would say this is the only way to live an authentic life. Finally, it's worth thinking about the future. If we continue on this path of valuing appearance more and more and substance less and less, where are we going as a society? What kind of world are we building? What kind of people are we becoming? A world where only the surface matters is a poor world. It's a world without great thinkers because nobody has patience for deep thought. Without great artists, because nobody appreciates art that challenges. Without great scientists, because science isn't visually attractive. Without great leaders, because we choose based on charisma instead of competence. It's a world beautiful on the outside, but empty on the inside. Schopenhauer would warn us that this path leads to collective suffering. A society that values only appearances is a society condemned to perpetual cycles of dissatisfaction. Because appearance is always temporary. Physical beauty disappears. Social status is unstable. Public recognition is ephemeral. Building an entire civilization on top of these unstable foundations is a recipe for disaster. But it doesn't have to be this way. We can still choose differently. As individuals, we can decide to value substance instead of surface. We can choose to develop our mind instead of just our image. We can seek genuine connections instead of superficial validation. And if enough people make these choices, the culture starts to change. It won't be easy. You'll swim against the current. You'll feel out of place. You might lose friends who are only interested in the performative version of you, but you'll gain something much more valuable: authenticity. You'll gain the peace of living according to your own values. You'll gain the satisfaction of developing something real instead of just maintaining a facade. You'll gain the freedom to be who you really are. Intelligence is being replaced by appearance because we've chosen this. Every time we like an empty photo instead of reading an important article, we make that choice. Every time we value the packaging more than the content, we reinforce this system. Every time we judge people by their beauty instead of their character, we contribute to this inversion of values. We're not passive victims. We're active participants in this culture of superficiality. But we can also make different choices. We can decide to feed our mind instead of just our vanity. We can value real knowledge instead of empty credentials. We can seek authenticity instead of manufactured perfection. Schopenhauer showed us that the path to a meaningful life goes through looking beyond appearances. It's not an easy or popular path. It requires courage to be different, discipline to resist the temptations of superficial culture, and humility to admit that maybe we've been wrong about what really matters. But it's the only one that leads us to something real, deep, and lasting. The choice is yours. You can continue in the infinite race for external validation that never satisfies, or you can start building something genuine on the inside that nobody can take from you. So choose wisely, or you might discover the only real antidote against this epidemic of superficiality. And there is a next step, something I reserve only for those who truly understood the depth of this problem. It's not a course, it's not a quick solution, it's deeper than that. I left the access in the first pinned comment, but only click if you're truly ready to face the consequences of thinking differently. If this video made you think differently about the world we live in, leave your like and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear this message. And most importantly, start today making choices that prioritize who you are instead of how you appear. Until the next video,